pause to truly wonder what your daily life would have looked like if you lived thousands of years ago. I mean, beyond the grand monuments and the epic battles we read about in history books, what did people actually do? Did they eat breakfast? What about weekends? Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey, a true deep dive into the everyday realities of ancient civilizations. We're going beyond the kings and the battles, peeling back the layers to explore the routines, the meals, the leisure, and even, well, simple joys of ordinary people in ancient Rome, Egypt, and some of their equally captivating neighbors. Our mission is to humanize the past, drawing from a rich tapestry of historical accounts, archaeological finds, psychological insights, and sociological perspectives. Think of it as a guided, evidence-based stroll through a typical day thousands of years ago. We're after those small details that surprisingly still resonate today, revealing profound truths about human experience across millennia.
And that's precisely where the real power lies. The ability of these seemingly small details to unlock deeper truths about human nature and society. We often find ourselves drawn to the grand narratives of empires and wars, but it's in the minutiae of daily existence, that we truly glimpse the universal human experiences that connect us to people from vastly different eras and cultures. Through this deep dive, you'll see how foundational institutions, the household, the economy, and even early forms of religion were built and functioned long before the grand empires we so often associate with these civilizations even fully emerged. Understanding these structures of daily life is crucial because they profoundly shaped everything else that followed, offering a remarkable window into the enduring patterns of human behavior and social organization. It's quite fascinating, really.
Absolutely. And to truly grasp that, we need to zoom out a bit first and look at the grand tapestry of how daily life itself actually evolved. Because before there were those towering empires, civilizations, at their core, were built from the everyday. They began with fundamental institutions like households and early economies. Just think about it. How did average individuals navigate the monumental shifts that defined their era? We're talking about the stabilization of agriculture, which transformed people from nomadic hunters and gatherers into settled village dwellers. That's a huge shift.
Massive. Absolutely life-changing.
Then the rise of specialized crafts meant not everyone had to farm. Some could become potters, weavers, or builders, creating entirely new social roles.
Right, diversification.
And eventually, the establishment of markets began connecting these towns and villages, creating a network of exchange that altered everything from what people ate to where they lived and how they spent their hours. These weren't just abstract economic shifts. For the average person, they were seismic changes in what they valued and who they interacted with daily.
Rome offers a truly fascinating case study in this evolution. If we trace its journey, it began as these humble pastoral communities in central Italy, perhaps around the 8th to 6th century BCE. Life then revolved around the family and agrarian rhythms, much as our sources describe. Pretty basic stuff, really.
Simple beginnings.
Very. But then it transitioned through Republican urbanization from the 5th to 1st centuries BCE, steadily growing into this incredibly complex imperial and cosmopolitan hub by the 1st century BCE to the 4th century CE. That was a massive transformation, as you said, that profoundly altered the daily lives of its citizens. Just immense change.
So what did that mean for the average Joe, the average Roman?
Well, for the everyday Roman, one of the most critical transformations involved food security. With the expansion of vast grain supply networks, particularly from regions like Egypt and Sicily, bread and the annona, that public grain dole became absolute staples, especially for the urban poor.
The bread part of bread and surfaces, right?
Exactly. This wasn't just about feeding people. It was a critical element of social stability, ensuring the populace was kept fed and, well, relatively content. Then there was urban living itself. As cities like Rome exploded in population, the rise of multi-story insulae or apartment blocks drastically altered concepts of household privacy.
I can only imagine cramped quarters.
Oh, definitely. Imagine living in these dense, often cramped buildings where neighbors were quite literally above and below you, and noise and smells traveled easily. It must have been intense.
And waste management, that must have been a huge issue.
A significant challenge, absolutely. In such dense environments, issues that strikingly still resonate with modern urban centers. Yet this density also fostered new forms of social mixing, where people from different walks of life might encounter each other daily in ways they wouldn't in more spread out agrarian settings. You'd rub shoulders with all sorts.
So a real melting pot in a way.
In many ways, yes. Imperial expansion and trade also brought about expanded tastes and new leisure activities. You start to see new dietary elements entering the Roman diet, like exotic spices that traveled vast distances, and the ubiquitous garum, that fermented fish sauce we'll talk more about, which was literally everywhere.
Ah, yes, garum, the Roman ketchup.
Kind of. We'll get into that. Beyond food, sophisticated leisure activities became central. The thermae, or public baths, weren't just for hygiene, they were incredible social centers.
Right, places to hang out, exercise.
Exactly. Places for exercise, gossip, even business transactions. And of course, the grand spectacles of the amphitheater and circus provided mass entertainment. An interesting culinary insight here is that many Roman cooks were actually freedmen or slaves, often highly specialized and prized for their culinary arts.
So skilled labor, even then.
Very much so. Luxury dining, particularly, became a key arena for social display and for reinforcing patronage networks, demonstrating that food wasn't just about eating, it was a potent symbol of power and status. Who you ate with and what you ate mattered a lot.
So if we put that on a timeline.
Okay, yeah. When we look at the timeline of the everyday Roman in the 6th to 4th centuries BCE, the family, especially the paterfamilias or male head of the household, was central. Life revolved around those agrarian rhythms. By the 2nd to 1st century BCE, the Mediterranean trade boom brought a flood of new foods, oils, and wine varieties into circulation, significantly diversifying the daily diet for many. Things got more interesting.
More flavors, more options.
Precisely. Then, from the 1st century BCE to the 2nd century CE, urban life really reached its zenith with those thermae, taverns, and a vibrant street food culture proliferating across cities like Rome and Pompeii.
That's the Rome we often picture, maybe, bustling and complex.
Yes, that's the peak imperial period. So Rome saw this incredible evolution, fueled by trade and urban growth. But let's shift our gaze now to ancient Egypt, where the landscape itself, the Nile, shaped an entirely different rhythm, didn't it?
It certainly did. It's fascinating. Ancient Egypt's daily life was fundamentally anchored by the predictable, almost sacred cycles of the Nile floods. This wasn't just a convenient river, it was truly the lifeblood of their civilization, structuring everything from their agricultural calendars, dating way back to pre-3000 BCE, to the very development of their complex pharaonic state.
It governed everything.
Everything. The Nile wasn't just a geographical feature, it was a profound, almost spiritual rhythm that dictated when people worked, when they rested, and how their entire society was organized.
So how did that work, practically speaking?
Well, the Nile inundation cycle directly structured all work patterns. Imagine living in a world defined by these three distinct seasons. Akhet, the inundation, when the fields were flooded, basically a huge lake.
Right, farming stops.
Exactly. Then Peret, the planting season, when the waters receded, leaving behind the incredibly fertile silt. And finally, Shemu, the harvest, a period of intense labor. During Akhet, when the fields were underwater, it naturally created an off-season for rural agricultural labor. This wasn't exactly idle time, though. Ah, okay, so what do they do?
It often shifted people to state projects, like building temples or pyramids, or maybe allowed for increased craft production in villages. It was their rhythm, intense agricultural work, followed by periods of different, often collective labor.
Makes sense. State-organized labor during the downtime.
And temple complexes in Egypt played a dual role. They weren't just religious centers, but also major employers and vital social hubs.
Like mini cities, almost.
In a way, yeah. They managed vast estates, employed numerous people, and were central to community life, serving as gathering points for festivals and administrative duties.
Okay, so that leads to the idea of time off.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really interesting point that corrects a common modern misconception. Weekends, as we understand them today, simply didn't exist in ancient Egypt.
Right, no Saturday, Sunday. Nope. Instead, life was punctuated by periodic temple festivals, bustling market days, and those natural agricultural downtimes, particularly during the inundation. These functioned as communal rest and celebration. Imagine the vibrancy and excitement of these collective celebrations, where entire communities would gather, feast, participate in processions, and take a significant break from their daily grind.
So holidays were tied to the gods in the seasons, not a weekly cycle.
Precisely. It offers a powerful contrast to our modern, fixed understanding of weekly work-life balance, suggesting a more fluid, ritually driven rhythm of life. Very different mindset.
Definitely. How did that evolve over time in Egypt?
Good question. Looking at the Egyptian timeline, in the pre-dynastic to early dynastic periods, life was characterized by simpler village communities focused on communal grain storage, basic survival. Then, during the Old and Middle Kingdoms, administrative bureaucracies began to grow, and state corvée labor.
That's the compulsory labor.
Yeah, essentially compulsory labor for public works became common for large projects like pyramids or canals. The state needed manpower. By the New Kingdom and late period, we see increased craft specialization, particularly evident in places like Deir el-Medina, which we'll discuss more.
The workers' village.
Right. Alongside that, you get growing foreign contacts and the development of urban artisan quarters. So it's a progression from simple agrarian communities to a complex, organized society, all deeply influenced by the Nile.
That Roman dynamism is striking, and Egypt's reliance on the Nile offers such a profound contrast. It's truly fascinating to see how different environments shape daily life so fundamentally. If we momentarily broaden our perspective beyond the Mediterranean, we can observe other contemporary civilizations with their own unique rhythms.
Like Mesopotamia.
Exactly. Mesopotamian city life often featured house plans oriented around central courtyards, creating these private domestic worlds even within dense urban settings. Very different from Roman apartments. Markets and temples played a significant role in regulating daily exchange and social interaction, acting as central economic and communal hubs. This contrasts sharply with the more public-facing life of Roman cities.
And the Indus Valley, they had amazing urban planning, didn't they?
You really did. In the Herpan towns of the Indus Valley, what truly stands out is the impressive urban planning and sophisticated sanitation systems, quite advanced for the time. This suggests a daily life that emphasized highly organized craft units and standardized weights, pointing to a sophisticated degree of order and commerce that impacted everyone. A very orderly society, it seems.
And China.
Then, in Han China, we see the profound role of more extended household networks, where ancestor veneration and strong lineage ties were absolutely central to daily existence. Family was paramount. Bureaucratic calendars structured communal rituals, deeply embedding daily life within a broader social and spiritual framework that prioritized family and tradition in ways distinct from, say, the more individualistic Roman emphasis.
Wow. So many variations.
From these foundational timelines, you can really start to see how vastly different daily life could be, even with common human needs like shelter and food. Which brings us nicely to food.
Yes, let's dig into the Roman table. So when we talk about it, many of us picture those lavish, almost decadent banquets we see in movies. But that wasn't the norm, was it?
Not at all. For most Romans, the diet was primarily a practical necessity, really a matter of calories and convenience. It certainly wasn't always gourmet. Far from it.
So what was the bedrock?
The absolute backbone of their diet was cereals, primarily wheat and barley, forming the essential bread and porridge known as pulse. This was the dietary bedrock for virtually everyone, rich or poor. Basic fuel.
Okay, carbs covered. What about protein?
Protein sources were varied and depended heavily on what was available and affordable. Legumes like lentils and chickpeas were abundant and a vital source of nutrition. Really important.
Cheap and nutritious.
Exactly. Fish, both fresh and salted, was crucial, especially for coastal and riverine populations. Occasional pork and other meats were consumed by those who could afford them, while poultry and eggs were pretty common. Beef, however, was a rarer, more expensive luxury, usually reserved for sacrifices or maybe grand occasions, not an everyday thing for most.
Got it. And flavor, beyond just plain porridge.
Flavor. Enter the iconic garum, the fermented fish sauce. Think of it as the Roman ketchup, though probably much stronger. It was ubiquitous, prized, and even industrially produced on a large scale.
Industrially produced fish sauce? Wow.
Yep. Olive oil and wine were not just dietary staples, they were also vital social lubricants, central to meals and gatherings. You couldn't really have a Roman meal without them. Herbs, vinegar, and imported spices like pepper and cumin dress up dishes, adding depth and sometimes signaling status. Pepper was a luxury import, for example.
Right, showing off your wealth with spices.
Precisely. The structure of Roman meals was also quite defined. There was intaculum, a light breakfast, often just bread dipped in wine or water.
Simple start.
Very. Then prandium, a quick midday meal or snack, often eaten standing or on the go. And finally cena, the main evening meal.
The big one.
Right. This could range from simple family fare, maybe more pulse and vegetables, to those elaborate multi-course banquets we hear so much about, especially among the elite.
But what about the urban poor? If they lived in those insulae without kitchens?
Great point. For the poorer urban dwellers, the daily reality was much simpler. Their diet revolved around cheap bread, maybe that porridge, poles, olives, and accessible street food from Thermopolia, those ancient fast food counters.
Okay, let's talk about those. The Thermopolia. Street food sounds very modern.
It does, doesn't it? But that street food culture was absolutely central, particularly the Thermopolia. Imagine a bustling Roman street, maybe near the Forum, filled with the aroma of hot stews and spiced wine. These bar counters were essentially ancient fast food establishments, serving affordable hot dishes that were a vital part of urban life for many who lacked cooking facilities or just the time to prepare meals at home.
So convenience food isn't new.
It's not. Archaeological digs, especially at Pompeii, have provided incredible insights into this. They've unearthed these counters, still with embedded jars called dolia, for food and drink, giving us tangible evidence of this lively, bustling street food culture. In some cases, we even have graffiti or painted signs revealing specific menu items, which truly brings history to life.
Like reading an ancient menu?
Pretty much. It shows us just how diverse and practical their daily meals could be. It underscores that food wasn't just for the elite dining in villas. It was for everyone, at every level of society. It's like walking into a Roman food truck rally.
I love that image. So garum was like a Roman ketchup, maybe a bit fishier, and Thermopolia were their version of fast food joints. Amazing. But let's explore this further, because eating in ancient Rome wasn't just about sustenance, was it? It had that profound social dimension you mentioned.
Absolutely. Communal dining was highly political. Banquets were not just meals, they were crucial arenas for patron-client relations. Well, clients would often gather at their patron's home for the cena, reinforcing loyalty and dependence. Banquets were also places for social climbing, where the choice of exotic ingredients, the lavishness of the setup, served as clear markers of status and influence. It was competitive display.
So food as performance.
Exactly. Food wasn't merely consumed, it was performed. The display of wealth and connections through dining was a powerful tool in the Roman social hierarchy. Who you knew, who invited you, what was served at all, sent signals.
Fascinating. Now, from the bustling Roman cena and street food, it kind of makes you wonder about the concept of downtime in other ancient societies, especially those so deeply tied to the land like Egypt. How did they relax?
You're right, that's a perfect pivot. And the contrast is stark. The ancient Egyptian concept of leisure was fundamentally different from our modern idea of a fixed weekend. It was deeply seasonal and ritualized, which really challenges our contemporary assumptions about work-life balance.
How is it structured then?
Their entire rhythm of life was dictated by that Nile-centric calendar we talked about. All work followed the Nile cycle. Akhet, the inundation period, Peret, the planting season, and Shemu, the harvest.
So leisure was tied to those cycles.
Largely, yes. During the inundation, Akhet, when the fields were underwater, this naturally created an off-season for rural agricultural labor. Now, this wasn't a universal holiday where everyone just kicked back, but it was a period where the intense work of farming paused.
Allowing time for other things.
Exactly. Allowing for other activities, often state projects like temple construction or quarrying, maybe military service, or just more time for craft production at home. This was their natural pause, a break from the fields.
But you mentioned festivals too.
Crucially, yes. The religious calendar played a vital role, punctuating life with numerous temple festivals, processions, feasts, and performances. These functioned as communal holidays.
Because those were the real days off.
In a sense. Imagine the vibrancy and excitement of these collective celebrations. Markets would swell with vendors and visitors, craftsmen would pause their work, and social visiting among families and friends would increase. These festivals provided essential communal rest and celebration, breaking up the daily grind in a profound way that integrated work, religion, and social life.
That sounds much more communal than our individual weekends.
It really does. And we have an incredible, unique glimpse into this through the artisan life at Deir el-Medina.
Ah, the tomb builder's village again. What do we know from there?
It's amazing. This was a worker village specifically for the royal tomb builders during the New Kingdom, and it's unique because of the sheer abundance of written records found there on pottery shards and papyrus called ostraca.
What kind of records?
Everything from detailed work schedule showing which days were worked and which weren't, payment records, often in grain and beer, to complaint letters between workers and accounts of festival days.
Complaint letters. Like ancient emails.
Sort of. They provide a rare, almost high-resolution window into the daily lives, the days off, the disputes, and the religious observances of non-elite artisans. We can see how their work week was structured, often maybe 8 days of work followed by 2 days off, which days were designated for rest or specific religious duties, and even read about their personal disputes or requests for time off for things like family events or illness. It's an incredible resource for understanding the specifics of ancient labor and leisure.
That is phenomenal. To have such detailed records of everyday life from so long ago truly brings history to life. It's not just about pharaohs. So when these Egyptian artisans or farmers weren't working or at a grand festival, what did they actually do for fun? Just hang out?
Well, beyond those big communal celebrations, everyday leisure activities were quite personal and varied, much like ours in some ways. People engaged in storytelling, which was a vital form of entertainment and cultural transmission, passing down myths, legends, folk tales.
Sure, before TV and internet.
Exactly. Music was central, often accompanied by the ubiquitous beer. Drinking beer was a staple, a common beverage for all social classes, even part of wages sometimes.
Wages and beer. Nice hook.
Right. Market visits weren't just for commerce, they were social events, opportunities to catch up, gossip, and see new faces. Sports like wrestling and various ball games were also popular. We see depictions of these. Personal grooming was important too. Cosmetics weren't just for the elite.
Looking good was important.
Seems so. And domestic religious observance at household shrines offered a more private, intimate connection to their beliefs. Many homes had small niches or altars.
So personal faith was part of daily life, too.
Definitely. These were the smaller moments of joy, connection, and self-care that anchored their lives.
And you mentioned the beer wages. Did that tie into socializing?
It seems likely. Laborers sometimes received rations of beer and bread as part of their wages, and social gatherings often revolved around these communal rations, strengthening community bonds and providing opportunities for relaxation and camaraderie. Sharing food and drink is always a social glue, isn't it?
True. So these rhythms, whether agricultural in Egypt or more urban in Rome, weren't just about practicalities. They really shaped the minds and societies of ancient peoples, creating a unique collective mindset.
Exactly. And this is where the deeper connections emerge, demonstrating the powerful idea that these small routines build culture. It's not just about the big events. This insight reaches into both individual psychology and the broader social dynamics, connecting ancient life to enduring human truths.
How so, on the individual level?
Well, on an individual psychological level, daily rituals like consistent meal patterns, the structure of the workday, regular religious observances played a crucial role in reducing uncertainty and strengthening individual identity. In times of agrarian stress, like a bad harvest, or urban stress, like overcrowding or disease, these routines acted as powerful mood stabilizers, providing a sense of order and predictability in an often unpredictable world.
Like anchors in a storm.
Precisely. Imagine the comfort of knowing when and how you would eat, or when you would participate in a communal religious act, even if other things felt chaotic. Furthermore, visible elements like food consumption, what you ate, how much, and the nature of one's living space powerfully communicated social rank. Status symbols.
Keeping up with the Joneses, ancient style.
You could say that. Humans then, as now, interpreted these cues quickly, which informed social identity and reinforced hierarchies. Those formal banquets we discussed in Rome, for instance, weren't just about eating. They were about cementing in-group cohesion and showcasing who belonged where in the social pecking order. This illustrates a deep psychological need for social signaling and belonging, which daily routines constantly reinforced.
Okay, and how did these routines shape society more broadly?
On the social dynamics front, these routines were truly the glue weaving the community fabric together. Essential social structures like patronage in Rome, gift exchange, and neighborhood ties were maintained and reinforced through routine interactions.
Where did these happen?
At markets, at the baths, during festivals, even just daily greetings on the street. These micro-interactions, a shared meal, a small exchange helping a neighbor, were incredibly important. They generated macro-social stability, creating a sense of community, mutual obligation, and collective identity that prevented societies from just fragmenting. It's the everyday stuff that holds things together.
Makes sense. What about roles within the household?
Yes. We also see how work division and gender roles were profoundly shaped by daily life. Household production, things like textile work, weaving was huge, food preparation. These created distinct gendered labor patterns. These roles, which we can often observe through burial goods like finding weaving tools with female burials or household tools found in excavations, profoundly shaped life chances, social mobility, and legal status for individuals. The daily grind wasn't just about survival, it was about defining one's place in the world, very much tied to gender.
It's incredible how these deeply ingrained patterns shaped ancient lives. And what's particularly interesting is their impact on the collective mindset, especially how ancient societies perceive time. That seems fundamental.
It really is. This is a subtle but profound difference in worldview from our own.
Tell me more.
For agrarian societies, like Egypt primarily, the cycles of nature, the flooding of the Nile, the planting season, the harvest fostered long-term planning, and a cyclical perspective of time. Time wasn't seen as a straight line moving forward.
But more like a wheel.
Exactly. It was a recurring rhythm, always coming back to the same points each year. This likely instilled a certain kind of patience, maybe a degree of fatalism tied to natural forces you couldn't control.
Okay, and how did urban life change that?
In contrast, urban trade economies, with their bustling markets and constant exchange, seem to have heightened what we might call market temporalities. There was a more immediate sense of consumption, opportunity, and the fleeting nature of profit or loss. Time felt more linear, perhaps, driven by commerce, deadlines for shipments, market days. It was likely a faster, more pressing perception of time.
That difference in perceiving time itself is fascinating, and what's even more striking is how many of these ancient echoes still resonate in our modern world. So how does all this connect to us today? Where do we see these echoes? It's remarkable how many direct connections we can draw between the ancient world and our present.
It really is. The past isn't as distant as it sometimes feels.
Take food culture, for instance. The Mediterranean diet, with its emphasis on fresh produce, legumes, olive oil, and fish that has a direct lineage stretching back to Roman times, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The core elements are remarkably consistent.
Bread traditions, still central to many cultures across the globe, are an enduring legacy from these ancient grain-based societies. And that fermented fish sauce, garum.
Ah, yes, Kara.
It has fascinating parallels in modern fermented sauces like soy sauce or Southeast Asian fish sauces, showing a long global tradition of flavor enhancement and culinary innovation using fermentation.
A universal human desire for umami, perhaps.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the vibrant street food culture we see in modern cities, where you can grab a quick, affordable meal from a vendor, directly mirrors the dynamics of ancient thermopolia. It's not a new invention. It's an age-old human convenience born of urban living.
That continuity is striking.
Then there are the lessons in urban planning. Roman sanitation, their impressive aqueduct engineering bringing fresh water into cities, and even the design of Pompeian insulae, those multi-story apartment blocks, continue to inform contemporary debates.
Oh, so.
We still grapple with urban density, the need for public spaces that foster community, like the baths did, and fundamental sanitation initiatives. These ancient solutions, or indeed the problems they faced, offer surprisingly relevant insights into our own urban challenges. How do you manage waste in a dense city? How do you provide clean water? These are ancient questions.
Still relevant.
Definitely. And in the realm of digital humanities, it's thrilling to see how 3D models, VR reconstructions, and experimental archaeology are making daily ancient life tangible again. These technologies are profoundly influencing education and media, allowing us to virtually walk through an ancient market or see inside a Roman apartment, bringing the past to life in unprecedented ways.
It's those resonances that really make this deep dive so compelling. And when we think about work-life balance, a very contemporary issue, the ancient examples offer such thought-provoking contrasts.
Like the Egyptian system.
Exactly. The Egyptian seasonal rhythm of work and rest, dictated by the Nile, and Roman communal leisure activities, baths, the spectacles, provoke modern questions about our own relationship with work. Think about the gig economy, the debates about a 4-day work week, the importance of mandated rest days, and the role of community festivals or holidays as essential social relief valves.
Are we maybe rediscovering things they knew?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are we perhaps rediscovering ancient wisdom about the need for rhythms beyond a rigid 9-to-5, 5-day week? It makes you question if our current systems are truly optimized for human well-being or just economic output.
That's a deep question. And pop culture plays a role here too, right?
Absolutely. Pop culture plays a crucial role in shaping our understanding, for better or worse. Historical fiction, TV documentaries, video games like Assassin's Creed. They often attempt to humanize the past, bringing ancient citizens to life. However, they also carry the risk of caricature or oversimplification. This is why accurate, everyday details are so crucial.
Why is that so important?
Because it makes these stories convincing and, more importantly, ethically responsible portrayals. Without that grounding in evidence, what people ate, how they dressed, their daily routines, we risk creating distorted images that do a disservice to the complexity of ancient lives. Getting the small stuff right matters.
It's also striking how everyday images of the past are used in politics and identity today. Heritage tourism is huge, and national narratives often draw on these images to construct a sense of shared identity.
Can you give an example?
Well, think of invoking Roman law as a foundation for modern legal systems, or pharaonic grandeur as a symbol of national pride and history. These often refer implicitly to aspects of daily life, governance, and monumental achievements that become powerful symbols.
Cultural capital. drawn from the past.
Exactly. While these connections are fascinating, it's absolutely vital to distinguish between what we know to be true and the myths that have crept into our understanding of the ancients. There are quite a few misconceptions out there.
That's an absolutely crucial point, and it leads us directly to some widely held, yet often inaccurate, beliefs about ancient life that we really need to address head on. Bust some myths.
Let's do it. What's a common one?
Okay, one common misconception is the idea that Romans ate garum and nothing else. We hear about garum a lot, so it's easy to exaggerate.
Right, the fish sauce again.
This is a significant exaggeration. While garum was indeed a ubiquitous and prized condiment like a Roman ketchup with a serious umami kick, it was a flavoring agent used to enhance dishes, not the entirety of their diet.
So they didn't just drink it.
Definitely not. They ate grains, vegetables, meat, and fish. Garum simply added that distinct, savory, salty flavor to many of these foods. Think of it like soy sauce in East Asian cuisine, used widely, but not the only thing people eat.
Okay, myth busted. What else?
Another persistent myth is that Egyptians had weekends like ours. As we've discussed, this is fundamentally false. Their concept of rest and leisure was entirely different.
Tied to the Nile and festivals.
Exactly. It derived from seasonal downtimes dictated by the Nile's agricultural cycle and significant, often multi-day, festival periods. These were communal, ritualized breaks, not a fixed 2-day weekend that rotated every 7 days. Projecting our modern workbook structure onto ancient Egypt fundamentally misrepresents their temporal and social organization.
So applying our modern framework just doesn't work.
It really doesn't. And then there's the dirty ancient stereotype, the notion that ancients were uniformly dirty or primitive. This is also a gross oversimplification.
Do you picture them as less hygienic?
Often, yes. But while hygiene standards varied significantly across different societies, regions, and social classes, just like today, really many ancient civilizations, especially the Romans and Egyptians, invested heavily in personal grooming and public sanitation. Romans, for example, had those incredible public baths, the thermae, which were marvels of engineering and served social functions too. Egyptians had sophisticated cleaning rituals and placed a high value on personal cleanliness, often indicated by the array of cosmetic palettes, mirrors, and grooming tools found in burials.
So not universally dirty at all.
Not at all. These practices demonstrate a nuanced and often complex approach to hygiene, albeit different from ours in some ways. We need to avoid those simple, often judgmental stereotypes.
Those corrections are so important, but it brings us to another challenge. The inherent difficulties in reconstructing everyday life due to the limitations in the historical record itself. It's not always easy, is it?
Far from it. One of the biggest challenges is what we call elite bias. Most of our surviving textual sources, literature, legal codes, histories, were written by the educated few, the elite.
And they wrote about their own lives.
Naturally, these sources focus on the lives, concerns, and perspectives of the upper classes, which can significantly skew our understanding of what life was like for the vast majority of ordinary people, farmers, artisans, laborers, slaves. Their voices are often missing from the texts.
So how do we get around that bias?
That's where archaeology and material culture are so vital. Scholars emphasize the importance of everyday artifacts, things like pottery fragments, discarded seeds, animal bones, tools, even waste deposits, believe it or not.
What can waste tell us?
A lot. Analyzing ancient garbage can reveal diets, health, consumption patterns. These material remains require specialized archaeobotanical, plant, and zooarchaeological animal bone interpretation to provide a crucial bottom-up perspective. This shows us what people actually ate, how they lived, what their domestic spaces were like, often contradicting the elite narratives. So reconstructing daily habits needs a careful balance between the written word and the physical evidence.
That makes sense, but there are ethical challenges too, right? In how we portray this.
Absolutely. There's a critical challenge in how we present history. Popular portrayals can sometimes romanticize ancient leisure, presenting an idyllic picture of a simpler time while simultaneously downplaying or outright ignoring the harsh realities.
Like slavery.
Exactly. Realities like slavery, forced labor, corvée, the precarious lives of the urban poor, high infant mortality rates. It's our responsibility to be vigilant against this kind of historical sanitization and ensure we present a full, nuanced picture, warts and all.
Avoiding the good old days fallacy.
Precisely. Beyond debunking myths, there are also some truly unusual truths that challenge our modern assumptions about the ancient world, things that might surprise people.
Oh, like what?
For instance, the surprising reality of ancient processed foods and industry. We tend to associate industrialized food production purely with modern times, right?
Yeah, factories and mass production seem modern.
But ancient societies had their own versions. Think about those large-scale fish sauce factories we mentioned, producing garum on an almost industrial scale, likely with specific recipes and even branding. Or the existence of large bakeries with multiple ovens, capable of feeding huge urban populations in cities like Rome.
So organized food production wasn't just local and artisanal.
Not always, no. This complicates our easy assumption that pre-modern food was always small-scale, local, and artisanal. There was significant organized production to meet the demands of large populations.
That is surprising. Anything else?
Another often overlooked reality concerns childhood in antiquity. The idea that childhood wasn't really a recognized phase or that children weren't valued is often perpetuated, but the evidence suggests otherwise.
How so?
Childhood phases were certainly recognized and often ritualized, things like weaning ceremonies, naming ceremonies, rites of passage into adulthood, and children appear in household artifacts far more often than commonly assumed.
Like toys.
Exactly. Toys, small tools seemingly made for children, depictions in art, even children's footprints preserved in clay. This indicates a more nuanced and attentive view of childhood than some narratives might suggest. It implies care, education, and integration into family life, challenging a darker, more dismissive view.
So kids were kids, even then.
Seems that way. Given all these complexities, the biases, the surprising truths, how do the experts, the scholars themselves, actually approach studying something as vast and intricate as ancient daily life? What are their tools?
Right, so for those dedicated to understanding the past, how do scholars actually piece together these daily truths? It's not just one method, is it?
Not at all. It's very multidisciplinary.
They employ a sophisticated range of methodologies. One prominent approach, particularly influential in the 20th century, is the Annals School, which focuses on the longue durée or long-term structures.
Looking at the big picture over time.
Exactly. This involves looking at slow-moving factors like climate change, geography, long-term economic trends, and demography, which shape daily life over centuries, often almost imperceptibly to the people living through it. It emphasizes those underlying rhythms, like the predictable Nile floods in Egypt, demonstrating how these profound forces dictated the patterns of daily existence for generations, shaping everything from work cycles to settlement patterns.
Setting the stage, in a way.
Precisely. Then there's social archaeology and the study of material culture. This field is all about using that tangible evidence we talked about: pottery fragments, animal bones, plant seeds, house layouts, tools, even ancient waste deposits.
Getting your hands dirty, literally.
Pretty much. Archaeologists use these material remains to reconstruct diet, health, trade networks, craft production, and daily habit patterns. These provide those crucial bottom-up perspectives that often reveal a different picture from the elite-centric texts.
Filling in the gaps left by written sources.
Exactly. For example, analyzing food remains from a common dwelling can tell us what ordinary people actually ate consistently, rather than just what a wealthy author described happening at a rare banquet scene. And anthropology plays a role.
Definitely. Cultural anthropology offers a powerful lens to study ritual, symbolism, kinship structures, and the organization of domestic space, not just as functional things, but as active performances of identity and social relations.
How does that work?
It helps us understand the deeper meanings behind the objects and spaces people used every day. Why was the hearth placed there? What did certain burial rituals signify about family? It adds a rich layer of interpretation to the physical remains, getting at the why behind the what.
So combining the long-term view, the material evidence, and the cultural meaning.
That's the ideal, yes. And beyond those mainstream approaches, critical perspectives continually challenge and deepen our understanding, asking different questions.
Such as?
Well, a Marxist or political economy approach, for example, emphasizes class structures, modes of production, like agriculture versus craft, and the often overlooked labor exploitation. This perspective deliberately highlights examples like the corvée labor in Egypt, that compulsory state service, or the widespread use of slavery, and various forms of wage labor in the Roman world. It forces us to consider the power dynamics and the often harsh economic realities beneath the surface of daily life. Who benefited from whose labor?
Right, focusing on inequality and power.
Yes. Post-colonial critiques, on the other hand, examine how classical histories themselves, the texts written by Greeks and Romans, were sometimes interpreted and weaponized later, especially during colonial periods or by nationalistic movements, to justify hierarchies or create specific identities. So they advocate for a greater attention to marginalized voices within the ancient world itself, those of women, slaves, conquered peoples, non-elites, whose experiences are often silenced or misrepresented in traditional accounts. It means reading the sources with a critical eye, questioning who wrote them and why, and actively seeking out alternative evidence.
Trying to recover lost perspective.
Precisely. And then there are behavioral historians and experimental archaeologists, which is a truly exciting field.
What do they do? Living history.
Kind of. Researchers run living experiments, things like attempting to bake ancient bread using reconstructed ovens and historical grain varieties, weaving textiles with replicas of ancient looms, or even trying to replicate Roman road-building techniques using the tools and methods described.
Wow, hands-on history.
It really is. This hands-on approach tests hypotheses about daily labor, the time and skill required for certain tasks, the efficiency of ancient technologies, and the practical realities of life. It brings theoretical ideas into practical, real-world reality in a way that just reading texts can't.
That sounds fascinating. So lots of different angles. Is there agreement on the importance of studying daily life?
Oh, absolutely. Ultimately, there's a broad scholarly consensus that everyday life is absolutely critical for a complete understanding of ancient societies. You simply can't grasp the full picture by just looking at kings, battles, and monumental architecture. The foundation is how people live day to day.
But are there still debates?
Of course. There are ongoing debates, for example, about which sources, textual or material, should carry more weight in reconstructions when they seem to conflict. Some scholars might prioritize written records, arguing for their explicit nature, while others argue that archaeological evidence provides a more direct, perhaps less biased, look at daily realities for a broader population.
Finding the right balance.
Exactly. It demonstrates that historical interpretation is a dynamic, evolving field, full of nuanced discussions and ongoing research, not just a collection of settled facts. Theory is one thing, but specific examples truly bring these ideas to life. Let's look at some vivid case studies that show these methods in action.
Great idea. Let's start with Rome. You mentioned Pompeii's Thermopolium earlier.
Yes. It's those vivid snapshots that truly make the past feel tangible. And few places offer a snapshot as clear and immediate as Pompeii, specifically its Thermopolia, preserved so dramatically by the eruption of Vesuvius. When archaeologists uncovered these ancient bar counters, often L-shaped facing the street, complete with those embedded earthenware jars, and even carbonized food remains inside some of them, well, it painted a remarkably detailed picture.
What did it show?
It vividly illustrated how urban Romans, many of whom lived in small apartments, the insulae, perhaps without proper kitchens, relied heavily on these hot, ready-to-eat meals. For many, this wasn't just an occasional treat, it was absolutely central to their daily feeding strategy. It allowed them to quickly grab a warm meal, perhaps a stew, some lentils, maybe sausages or bread, along with wine, without the time, space, or resources to cook extensively at home.
So takeaway culture is ancient.
Very much so. What's more, the epigraphic evidence graffiti scratched into the walls, painted signs found at some of these sites, even reveals menu items, prices, and sometimes the names of the owners or servers.
Like best stew in Pompeii, ask for Lucius.
Something like that. It offers an incredibly personal glimpse into ancient commerce and the bustling, immediate nature of urban social life. You can almost hear the chatter, smell the cooking, see people stopping by for a quick bite. It's archaeology bringing daily interactions to life.
That glimpse into Roman street life is incredible, truly preserved in time. But if we want truly granular detail on workers' lives, I remember our sources highlighted that Egyptian village, Deir el-Medina, as giving us an almost unbelievable level of insight into non-elite lives, didn't it?
It really is unparalleled. Deir el-Medina offers insights into the lives of non-elite individuals that are exceptionally rare for the ancient world.
Remind us what it was again.
Located in a secluded valley on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes, it was a purpose-built worker village, occupied for centuries during the New Kingdom, housing the highly skilled artisans and laborers who constructed and decorated the royal tombs in the nearby Valley of the Kings and Valley of the Queens.
Okay, so a very specific community. What makes it so special?
What makes it so extraordinary is the sheer abundance of written records found there, primarily ostraka, those inscribed potsherds and flakes of limestone used like scrap paper, as well as some papyri. Thousands have been found.
And they wrote about daily stuff.
Everything. We're talking about detailed records like complaint letters detailing disputes between neighbors or arguments over wages and rations. Precise work rosters showing who worked when, who was absent, and sometimes why brewing beer or wife was bleeding are actual recorded reasons. Detailed accounts of deliveries of supplies, payments, tool inventories, and notes about festival days and religious observances.
You're kidding. Brewing beer as a reason for absence.
It's recorded. It provides an extremely rare, high-resolution window into daily lives, labor conditions, literacy levels, economic interactions, social networks, family structures, and religious practices of these non-elite artisans. We get names, family relationships, legal disputes. Imagine being able to read about their squabbles over donkey ownership, their prayers to local gods, their days off for religious observances, or even their requests for time off to deal with personal matters. It truly humanizes these individuals and shows the intricate social fabric of their community in a way that grand royal inscriptions never could.
That is just phenomenal. It shifts the focus completely. So archaeology, like Pompeii, written records like Deir el-Medina. What about scientific methods?
And that's where scientific methods really come into their own, illuminating daily life, especially for those whose stories aren't told in text or preserved so dramatically. Take zooarchaeology and household artifacts, for example.
Analyzing bones and stuff.
Exactly. At sites across the ancient world, from Neolithic villages like Çatalhöyük in Anatolia to large Indus Valley cities, the careful analysis of animal bones and preserved plant remains, archaeobotany, offers incredibly detailed insights. By studying these remains, what species are present, cut marks on bones, seed types, pollen archaeologists can reconstruct diet composition with remarkable accuracy. They can understand butchery patterns, figure out which animals were raised versus hunted, and even determine seasonal consumption patterns and trade in foodstuffs over long distances.
So finding fish bones far inland means trade.
Precisely. Crucially, this type of evidence helps to challenge that elite diet-only narrative often found in textual sources, giving us a more accurate picture of what most people actually ate day in and day out.
And other household items.
Beyond food, things like domestic shrines, small niches or altars within homes, protective amulets worn by individuals, and even informal graffiti scratched onto the walls of homes or everyday pottery. These provide direct evidence of how everyday religious practice, folk beliefs, and even humor were deeply woven into domestic life.
So religion wasn't just big temples.
Not at all. These finds show that spiritual and cultural expressions were a constant, intimate part of the daily routine within households. It shows us individuals finding ways to express their beliefs, fears, hopes, and personalities in the most mundane of spaces, reflecting a rich inner life that often goes unrecorded in official histories. These diverse case studies truly help us build a vivid, multifaceted picture of ancient existence.
So putting these examples side by side and thinking about Rome and Egypt again, what does this all mean when we compare them? It really reveals a world of difference in their daily rhythms, even with those shared human needs underneath.
The contrasts are really informative, aren't they?
Roman urban life, for instance, as we've seen, was heavily centered on those public elements. The baths, thermae, as crucial social hubs, the diverse street food from Thermopolia, and the grand civic spectacles in the amphitheater or circus. This reflects a more public-facing, intensely communal daily rhythm, where much of life happened outside the private home in shared urban spaces. There was a real emphasis on public display and interaction.
Very outward-looking in many ways.
Contrast this with Egyptian life. While cities existed, for many, life was more temple-centered in terms of community focus and deeply intertwined with the agricultural seasons dictated by the Nile. The rhythms of the river and the religious calendar, punctuated by those major festivals, structured much of their daily existence and provided the main forms of communal gathering and collective identity outside the village or family unit.
More inward-looking, perhaps, or at least oriented differently.
Perhaps. However, despite these distinct differences in public life and temporal rhythms, it's crucial to note that shared belief we touched on earlier. Both societies had strong household religious practices. Those little shrines, amulets, personal prayers.
Right, the private faith component.
Exactly. This illustrates a common thread of private spirituality that existed alongside their grand public religious institutions, showing that personal faith, family rituals, and concern for the afterlife were deeply integrated parts of everyday life in both cultures, just expressed differently.
And if we broaden that comparative lens again, beyond just Rome and Egypt to other major ancient cultures,
we see even more distinct variations, often shaped profoundly by environment and specific social structures. In Mesopotamia, for example, a defining feature was the strong role of temple-palace economies.
Meaning the temple and ruler controlled a lot.
Yes, administrative control over staples like grain and other resources heavily influenced daily life and labor. And architecturally, those urban neighborhoods built around courtyard houses shaped social mixing in a way that emphasized the privacy of the family unit within the dense city.
Different feel from a Roman street.
Definitely. Then in China and India, as we mentioned, the defining role of lineage and extended family networks heavily shaped household obligations and daily routines. Ritual calendars tied to agriculture and ancestral veneration structured domestic rhythms in unique ways, with family ties and responsibilities extending far beyond the immediate nuclear unit and profoundly influencing individual actions and decisions.
So family structure itself dictates daily life more strongly there.
It seems so. And this brings us back to that overarching influence of climate and resources. It's impossible to overstate this. Diets, work patterns, settlement types, daily routines, all were profoundly dependent on their specific environments.
Right.
The reliable, cyclical flooding of the Nile versus the more varied Mediterranean climate versus the powerful monsoons in parts of Asia, each produced distinct challenges and opportunities, forcing societies to adapt and innovate in unique ways. This reveals the immense adaptability of human societies, demonstrating how deeply intertwined daily life is with the natural world around it.
These comparisons are really enlightening, showing there's no single ancient way of life. But studying history, especially daily life, isn't without its challenges and even its responsibilities for us today, is it?
Not at all. It comes with baggage.
Let's talk about the strengths first, though. What's the real value of this deep dive into the everyday? One of the profound values is its ability to humanize the past. It restores agency and dignity to the ordinary people, the farmers, the artisans, the shopkeepers, the women managing households whose names rarely appear in royal lists or battle chronicles. It highlights their resilience, their creativity, their worries, their joys, their simple human experience. It reminds us that they were not just background figures, but active participants shaping their world.
Giving voice to the voiceless, in a way.
Exactly. Secondly, it reveals fundamental continuities in human experience. Basic needs and concerns like food, shelter, hygiene, raising children, building social networks, coping with loss. These are universal. By studying how ancient people address these, we gain insight into long-term social processes and recognize the enduring threads that connect us across vast stretches of time. We see ourselves in them.
Finding common ground across millennia.
Yes. And lastly, maybe surprisingly, it offers practical lessons for modern policy. Understanding ancient urban design, water management, public health initiatives, or even systems of social welfare and community support can inform contemporary debates. It helps us consider approaches that have been tested, adapted, succeeded, or failed in various forms over millennia. History is a lab almost.
Those strengths are compelling. It really makes the case for why this matters. But let's also be honest about the inherent difficulties and limitations in reconstructing the past, especially daily life. It's not straightforward.
Definitely not. We have to acknowledge the challenges.
One major weakness, as we've discussed, is source bias. Much of what survives, especially written material, comes from the elite, giving us a skewed view. The archaeological record itself is also often incomplete. Things decay, sites are destroyed, not everything is preserved equally. Preservation biases mean organic materials often disappear unless conditions are exceptional, like in Egypt or peat bogs. This limits certainty and can distort our understanding.
We only see fragments.
Exactly. It's like trying to understand an entire conversation from just a few fragmented sentences overheard through a wall. There's also the significant risk of overgeneralization. It's so easy to fall into the trap of treating the Romans or the Egyptians as monolithic entities, as if everyone within these vast, long-lasting civilizations lived the exact same life.
Which is obviously untrue.
Right. This ignores crucial regional variations. Life in Roman Britain was different from Roman Syria, temporal changes over centuries, and vast class differences. The life of a wealthy Roman senator dining on exotic foods was worlds apart from that of an enslaved mine worker or an urban poor laborer living hand to mouth. We have to constantly specify who, when, and where.
Avoiding stereotypes.
And then there's the persistent pitfall of presentism, projecting our own modern categories, values, and concepts like weekend, leisure, privacy, or even nuclear family onto ancient systems where they might not fit or might mean something completely different. This can fundamentally mislead our interpretations, causing us to misunderstand their unique social, economic, and temporal structures.
Judging the past by the standards of the present. A big no-no.
Right. And beyond these methodological limits, there are ethical considerations too, aren't there?
Absolutely. This brings us to an important responsibility for those of us who interpret and present ancient history, especially daily life, to a wider audience. Simplified images of everyday life can sometimes be selectively used or even weaponized.
How so?
They can be appropriated for nationalist narratives or cultural essentialism. For example, a modern nation might cherry-pick aspects of Roman daily life, say, discipline or engineering prowess, to claim a particular historical lineage or to justify certain political ideals today, potentially distorting the past for present political agendas, using history selectively.
Right, creating a usable past that might not be accurate.
Precisely. We also need to caution strongly against romantic nostalgia. Overly sentimental portrayals of simpler pasts, free from modern stresses, can easily obscure the profound exploitation, inequality, violence, and hardship that many ancient people faced daily. Life for slaves, for most women, for the conquered, for the poor was often brutal and precarious. It's our responsibility as historians and communicators not to gloss over those realities in favor of an idealized, often inaccurate vision of antiquity. We must present a balanced, nuanced picture acknowledging both the achievements and the suffering.
That feels incredibly important. So, given these challenges, given the ethical considerations, how do experts ensure we get the most accurate, nuanced picture possible, and what does the future hold for this field? How do we move forward?
Great questions. The path forward for understanding ancient daily life is incredibly exciting, actually, driven by increasingly sophisticated methodologies and, crucially, collaborative research. Interdisciplinarity is absolutely key.
Bringing different fields together.
Exactly. It's no longer enough for an archaeologist to just dig or a historian to just read texts in isolation. Scholars must combine traditional textual analysis with sophisticated scientific methods. Archaeobotany, plants, zooarchaeology, animals, geoarchaeology, soils and landscapes, bioarchaeology, human remains, isotopes for diet and migration, material science, analyzing artifacts, and integrate that with hands-on experimental archaeology.
A real team effort.
It has to be. This holistic approach, integrating diverse sources and methods, is what yields the richest and most comprehensive insights into the complexities of past lives. We're also seeing the growing power of microhistory approaches.
What's that exactly?
Instead of painting with broad strokes, microhistory involves deep dives into a single household, a specific village, like Duel Medina, a particular workshop, or a unique set of inscriptions or letters. These intensely focused studies can yield incredibly rich, detailed insights into the lives, strategies, and worldviews of individuals and small communities, which can then illuminate or challenge broader assumptions about the society as a whole. It's about finding the universal in the particular.
Getting specific to understand the general.
You got it. And digital frontiers are truly revolutionizing both the study and the public engagement with ancient daily life. This is a huge area of growth.
How is technology changing things?
Digital reconstruction, through technologies like virtual reality, VR, augmented reality, AR, and detailed 3D modeling based on archaeological data, is allowing lay audiences to experience ordinary ancient life in incredibly immersive ways. Imagine walking through an accurately rendered Roman insula, seeing the furniture, maybe even smelling simulated cooking odors, or exploring an Egyptian village. This could be incredibly powerful for education and empathy.
Bringing the past to life visually.
Yes, but, and this is critical, with that power comes responsibility. It's crucial that we maintain transparency about uncertainties and scholarly interpretations within these digital spaces. We must clearly label what is certain fact, what is informed conjecture based on evidence, and what might be artistic license needed to fill gaps, avoiding creating a false sense of certainty.
Honesty about what we don't know.
Exactly. Furthermore, comparative studies continue to be invaluable. By systematically looking across different cultures and time periods, researchers can more effectively separate patterns driven by universal environmental factors or basic human needs from those that are truly distinctive cultural choices or historical developments. This helps us refine our understanding of human agency and cultural diversity in shaping daily routines and societal structures.
Okay, so interdisciplinarity, microhistory, digital tools, comparison, that's the way forward.
That seems to be where the most exciting work is happening. These advancements promise an even richer, more nuanced understanding of ancient lives. But why, fundamentally going back to the beginning, why does understanding that piece of flatbread, that market stall interaction, that child's game, truly matter to us today? What's the ultimate takeaway?
That's the big question, isn't it? So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've journeyed through bustling Roman streets and along the fertile banks of the Nile. And hopefully we've shown how the small things, the taste of that flatbread or porridge, the noise and commerce at a market stall, the rules of a child's game, the pattern of a workday, are the fundamental threads that truly weave civilizations together. It's in these mundane, everyday details that we often find the deepest truths about what it meant to be human then and what it means now.
It connects us.
It really does. Understanding everyday life restores agency and dignity, as you said, to the ordinary people whose names rarely appeared in kings' lists or grand histories. It gives them a voice and a presence, acknowledging their contributions and their struggles. It also shows us that institutions we study, like temples, markets, households, legal systems, aren't just abstract structures on paper. They profoundly shape mentalities, behaviors, opportunities, and constraints in ways that echo across centuries, sometimes even into our own lives.
And thinking about our own lives, it really helps us question our own routines today, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This raises an important question for all of us, maybe. What habits, what daily rituals, what material possessions of ours, our smartphones, our fast fashion, our social media posts will archaeologists of the distant future dig up and use to define us? What story will our everyday life tell about our priorities, our values, our anxieties, and our society?
That's a really powerful thought. What traces are we leaving behind in our daily routines?
Makes you think, right? It's a powerful way to connect our present to the distant past, making history feel deeply personal and relevant.
Absolutely. And looking forward, as archaeology unearths more evidence and digital tools continue to improve, we will undoubtedly gain ever denser, more vivid, and more immersive reconstructions of ordinary life. We'll learn more about the isotopic signatures in bones revealing individual diets, see VR reconstructions of entire neighborhoods. The potential is amazing.
More detail than ever before.
But, and this is the crucial final point, with greater detail comes greater responsibility. A responsibility to resist the temptation of sensationalism, to honestly disclose uncertainty and debate, and to actively amplify the voices of the marginalized within these ancient societies, the women, the enslaved, the poor, the conquered. Our goal must be to ensure we're creating a truly humanizing and responsible history for all, one that reflects the full complexity of past lives.
Well said. A challenge, but a worthy one.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the threads of time.